Thank you guys for joining us. This is Joel.
This is George.
And we're going to talk about a very controversial topic today. That topic being, should Christians get into politics? Now, I'm going to start off by saying, and Jonathan George can go a little bit after me. First of all, something that people always talk about is separation from church and state. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
But something that's really struck me and something that I have to say and get off my chest is that I feel like there's really no separation at all anymore. I feel like the state is going in a direction where they're telling the church what to do and how to do it. Let me give you an example. Gay marriage. It's gotten to a point where a pastor can't say what he wants to say when it comes to this topic because, you know what? It's considered hate speech. But why is something that's in the Bible considered hate speech? And I've also read that it's going to come to a point where there's going to be people in the government that are going to make pastors marry gay couples. And that's something that's very controversial itself. So when you want to talk about politics and separation of church and state, you have to realize that maybe we're not so separated after all. And should a Christian talk about politics? I think a Christian should be aware of what the heck is going on when you talk about politics. Because if you're a Christian and you don't know what's going on, and you say, well, God is my leader, and you don't know what's going on, and a specific politician goes out their way to do something that's not very biblical, where do you stand with this? And I know that Jonathan George disagrees with this, but I could honestly tell you that Trump is a guy who doesn't attack the church. And as controversial as he is, I can honestly tell you, I don't see Donald Trump being a guy that forces pastors to marry gay couples.
So Joel brought up a lot of interesting points. I agree with some of them. I don't agree with all of them. I do think that the church has before been a powerful place in the community. Meaning when we're talking about Dr. Martin Luther King, for example, Ebenezer Baptist Church in the Southern Church Coalition, they led the civil rights movement. So they had a voice in the community. They had a voice in politics. So I believe that churches, especially in today's day and age when things are happening around you and we don't have a vacuum, churches do have to act accordingly, and they have to have their voice heard in the community. Now, I do think that there is a certain line that churches cannot cross. The certain line that I feel like churches that cannot cross is this fact that we have to respect the authority that's in office at the moment. Not because we might not agree with a certain person or the certain ideologies of the person, but we agree or we respect the authority that the office holds. So, for example, we've been already speaking about Trump. So, for example, I am not the biggest Trump supporter, but I do realize that I have to respect Trump's authority.
Now, let me ask you a question. What's respect? Because if you look at social media, you look at the news, you look at the way people are actually belittling his name, in a sense, destroying his credibility. What do you consider? Where do you draw the line when you talk about respect?
Well, I look in the Bible, and it says in Romans chapter 13, verse 1, everyone must submit to governing authorities. For all authority comes from God, and those in position of authority have been placed there by God. So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished.
Now let me be advocate.
Go ahead.
What if these guys are corrupt?
Okay, and that's exactly where I was going to go to next. So a lot of Christians would be like, well, what happened? We're talking about Hitler, and would you have to respect his authority? Now we're going down a different road. When I'm talking about respect, let's look at the story of David and Saul and King Saul. David had a chance to kill King Saul, but he decides not to. Why? Because he recognizes that King Saul is anointed by God, and who is he to take away King Saul's life? That's what I'm talking about in the same sense. Now, if we're going to compare Trump and Hitler, I think that's a terrible comparison as well.
And a lot of people say that.
And the reason why I say it's a terrible comparison is because as a Christian, I must respect the authority of the person who's ruling me, except if what that person does or says goes against my faith or my religion. I'm pretty sure slaughtering of 6 million Jews goes against the Christian belief, which goes against the 10 Commandments, goes against the fact to don't kill anybody. So in that instance, you do not have to comply with the laws that happen there. You can see that with the example of Daniel, when Daniel doesn't comply with what happens with the king tells him. When the king says, you must only pray to me and you cannot pray to any gods for 30 days, what does Daniel do? Daniel decides, no, I'm going to pray to God anyway. So as long as it doesn't interfere with God's laws, with the laws that God has, then we should be obedient.
Now, do you believe that Christians should discuss politics amongst themselves at all? Because I've witnessed myself, Christians could get real nasty amongst themselves when they're discussing politics. We could talk about Obama. When Obama took office, I can say churches were split half and half, at least in New York City, on Barack Obama. So much so that I could say there were issues. There were a lot of issues.
I personally think that we as Christians have to be able to have civil conversations about certain things, and I think that we're not called to be defiant. I think we're called to have conversation, and conversation could either be beneficial or it could be detrimental. We should not get angry when we're having these conversations, but we should recognize that there's differences, not just between the people outside and the people in church, but differences between different brothers and sisters. That one brother could believe in the right to bear arms and the other could believe in not in the right to bear arms, and that we could perfectly be together, and because at the end of the day we're still serving the same God.
Amen. So thank you guys for listening. For more videos and for more updates, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We will continue to update on a regular basis. Take care and God bless, and make sure to subscribe.